Hey folks, we are back on the Dev Twitch stream. My name is Nick Taylor. I am a lead software engineer at Forum. Forum is the software that powers Dev.
And I did not have the mute on our stream, so you might have heard Nick twice there. I am Christina Gorton, the open source community manager at Forum. And today we're talking about kind of all things open source. We're talking about GitHub, things you may know, you may not know. So that's kind of what we're doing today. We'll maybe take questions from people. If you're in the audience and you want to ask some questions, please feel free to, and we will take your questions. And yeah, so we're going to go from there. Nick, did we want to start with the bug smash?
Yeah, I think we can start with the bug smash. Let's kind of maybe go through what it is, and then we can kind of we'll kind of freestyle from there. We'll just go through a bunch of the things. I just realized I'm logged in as the Practical Dev account on Twitch, which is fine, but I will probably log myself out and log back in. But yeah, I'd
That's okay.
say yeah. Why don't we start with the bug smash? So Christina just put a link to the inaugural bug smash on Dev 2. And so, what is the bug smash, Christina? Tell me more
Yeah,
about
so
this
the
bug
bug
smash.
the bug smash is somewhat of my brainchild, I guess. So um, I am in our repository all day long. So GitHub has, our forum has a large open source community. I am in there all the time. I have gone through and found bugs, and I realized we had quite a lot of bugs still open that our engineering team didn't necessarily have the capacity to work on, but that I wanted to highlight for those in our community who wanted to contribute. So we have a lot of great contributors in our community already. I also wanted to open it up for people who maybe haven't contributed. And so it was initially just kind of a list of some of the bugs, just wanting to start with like 20 bugs and see if people wanted to contribute. Luckily, in the first day, everyone took all 20 bugs, so I have added more. If you still want to participate, you can. So you can participate. You can grab a bug and just get started. You can ask questions, and we'll kind of go through on GitHub where you might want to ask questions, look at some issues and stuff like that. But the bug smash is just there for the community to kind of work together to smash a lot of the bugs that we still have in our repo that our actual engineers can't work on at the moment. I can't hear you, Nick.
Oh, I thought I was muted and I ended up muting myself instead of unmuting myself. Um,
There you
good,
are.
good move, good move. Yeah, so for the bug smash, if I was someone who wanted to contribute to the forum code base and wanted to find out which bugs are available to be smashed, what would I do?
Yeah, so we have a label called Bug Smash. So if I don't know if you want to screen share and go into like GitHub and look at labels real quick, but that's where we can kind of start from.
Yeah, I think we can do that. Uh, let me
GitHub and look
just,
at labels real quick, but that's where we can kind of start from.
yeah, I think we can do. Yeah, and I did what you just did, Christina, and I unmuted the stream for a second too. Okay, let me load up the GitHub. Oh man, I've got so
We
many
always have
browser
something.
tabs open. I
It's
should have
okay.
closed. All right, let's go here and okay, I'm gonna switch to sharing my screen. We're using Zoom today, so I'm not that I'm out of my element, but it's not what we're usually using. So okay, let's share here. Cool. Uh,
Awesome. So a lot of times when you go into a a repo somewhere that you might want to contribute, you go in initially and you're at the code. Well, we also have our issues and our pull requests. When you go into issues at the top, a lot of times they'll tell you you can look at labels. So up there, there's a thing that says labels. you click on that, you can search. We have a lot of labels in our repository. I will say that they all do have a purpose. That a lot of them tell us a lot of things that different areas on the site we're going to work with, whether it's front end, back end. These things where it's like actual size is something that the forum team uses for how big a feature might be. So there's reasons why. But if you look up the bug smash label, that's where you will see the bugs that you can work on if you want to work on the bug smash. So it's two different words,
Oh, okay.
bug and then smash, and that's
Cool, cool.
it
I
might
didn't know
not
you
pop
could
up.
use spaces in the, well, I guess I knew you could. I just didn't think it would find it in the search, but okay. So we've filtered it down to stuff that's related to bugs, but Bug Smash is
Mhm.
here. So if I click on here now, I can see all the bugs that are related to the Bug Smash.
Yeah, and just as a quick heads up for anyone who wants to contribute, if you see a little person, like right there, there's a little image with a person, that means it's been assigned to someone. So that means it's already been assigned. If you have the other little thing where there's like a one there, that means someone's already put in a pull request for it. So people are working on those if you see them.
Yeah.
If you go down and you don't see an image, then those are the bugs that are still available. So right there, the modal appears under the nav bar. By the way, that one's a good first issue, front
Yeah.
end ready. If anyone wants to work on that one, someone was going to work on it and then they couldn't. So
Okay.
this one is still relevant if you all want to work on it.
Yeah, and this is a good kind of good segue to explain how if you did want to work on an issue, and this doesn't
Mhm.
have to do with the bug smash specifically. This is in general in our project. Other projects might do this too, but a good practice is when a bug isn't assigned. Well, first, if it's not assigned to anybody, if you would like to be assigned to it, the way GitHub works, and I'm pretty sure this is just to avoid spamming folks, is you need to add a comment to the issue.
Mhm.
Typically, we just ask folks, hey, if you'd like to work on this, just leave a comment. You don't have to say, I mean, typically folks will say, I would like to work on this as the comment, but it requires you commenting at least once so that we can assign it to you. And uh, it's good assigning the issues to folks because it avoids some potential issues where if I've assigned it to Christina, for example, and then somebody else comes in and sees this issue and they start working on it, uh, we will always politely say, "Well, I'm sorry, somebody's already assigned to the issue." Um,
Yeah.
and this is also good too because we really don't want to get in a situation, and I think most projects don't, where you have these competing pull requests because folks weren't aware that other people were working on it. So
Mhm.
it's kind of a nice mechanism to kind of prevent that. And I don't have an example at the moment, but there's examples on our repository where somebody, like even just yesterday, somebody said, "Can I work on this?" But somebody had already been assigned prior. So
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, a couple of the bug smash issues were like that because I think a lot of people jumped on them very quickly the first day, and so a couple people, and just whoever's the first on the list, that's where we, as forum, not everyone does this, but that's what we do. The first person on the list will say, okay, they can work on this. If they don't end up wanting to work on it, they can just let us know, which is usually what I say. Hey, for some reason you can't work on it, just let us know, and then we would go to the next person that wanted to work on it,
yeah,
which you'll see a lot of open source projects will do.
exactly. I'm just gonna drag out the Twitch stream tab because I'm using it to comment in the chat, so we don't need to keep
Mhm.
seeing that on the screen. Not that I have anything to hide, and it's being streamed anyways. But um, yeah, the other thing, so Christina was mentioning, so we're filtering by labels. So we're obviously for at least the Bug Smash event, you want to have make sure the label Bug Smash is there. But in general, when you're searching for stuff, as Christina mentioned, this was a good first issue. So we actually label it good first issue, and it's just a nice way to kind of, instead of you having to go through all the issues, like maybe you're just getting started out in open source, or maybe you're new to some front end work, so you're like, I want to just kind of dip my toes into it and start working on something. The good first issue tag is a great place to start. Um, Also in our repository, folks do this in other repositories as well. Might not be the same names for tags, but for us, when something's ready to be worked on, we tag it with ready for dev. And we do that because we don't want folks to necessarily start working on things if it's not all fleshed out yet. Like maybe there's still
Yeah.
some technical things we're looking into.
It
So
might not be a confirmed bug. There
yeah,
might be like
exactly.
there's all kinds of things.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think one piece of advice, and this is for any open source project, is just don't be afraid to ask questions. Like even just be explicit. Hey, like, is this ready to be worked on, or can I take this? And then you know, different projects, timelines for maintainers getting back to you vary because we are all people and we have other stuff going on. um, you know, they'll get back to you, I would say typically in a timely manner, but
Yeah.
you know, just remember to be considerate of folks' times. Like it's a little, I think it's slightly different for our project because we're getting paid to work on open source, um, but I'm a maintainer on other projects, and sometimes it's just like uh, I don't have the bandwidth to work on it. And it's like, even if I want to work on it, I'm like, nope, I gotta, I need to get my sleep. And, so just be mindful of that, in general. Um, the other thing,
Yeah, Nick and I were talking about, oh, go ahead, Nick.
no, no, go ahead.
Nick and I were talking about this beforehand that a lot of times, I think most people on the web know this, that when someone's on the web, sometimes you forget that that person behind that issue is, or, those maintainers are real people. And just keep in mind that, we all have things that we're doing. We have other stuff happening. There's
Yeah,
things that happen in life. And so if you're eager to work on a project, that's great, and most maintainers are really going to appreciate that. But if you're not getting a response right away, don't like get upset about that. Just realize there might be a reason why. Even within a week, if you want to do a gentle like nudge on like your issue
yeah,
of just, hey, have you had a chance to look at this? That's perfectly fine. Just realize that sometimes not everyone has the time to. Like Nick said, we are a little bit different. I exclusively work on the open source project here at Forum, so I
yeah,
tend
yeah.
to be able to respond to people. But even then, sometimes things, slip through the cracks, and we don't mean to, miss people, but sometimes it happens.
Yeah, yeah, because it is quite a large project, and I've let things slip through the cracks too sometimes, and but then people will give a friendly nudge, including some of my coworkers sometimes, like, oh hey,
Hmm.
like my awesome coworker Michael Cole, like last week, he's like, oh, just FYI, this one's been kind of sitting a while. I think he commented a while back. Mine just kind of circling around on that. So yeah, so there's that. And I think it's just really important to say it explicitly, because a lot of times with stuff on the internet, people, completely forget that people are behind things. So it's just good to be mindful of that. Yeah,
Yeah,
cool,
definitely.
cool. All right, so
Is
yeah, go
Yeah, go
ahead.
ahead. Go
No,
ahead.
no, you go ahead.
Nope, you go.
I was gonna say, what are we gonna do next? So so definitely go
Okay.
ahead.
I think okay, I think we should talk a little bit more on like since we're on this issue, and if you go down a little bit, what you're gonna see in an issue when someone puts one up, and this is a good example of one because they've given us screenshots, they've told us like examples of what's happening. So if you're
Yeah,
ever gonna put in a bug on a repo, this is a good thing to think of. A lot of people have kind of a default of what they want you to say. We have a template, what's called a template, and we ask you
yeah,
to put the more information you can put, the better. Like the more likely that issue is going to get worked on, right? And so if you put a ton of as much information as you can, you may not know the whole what's going on. So as much as you
yeah,
can, that's really helpful. It helps us investigate, helps us, reproduce the bug, the issue that's there, and then it helps the person that's going to contribute. So as much information as you can put helps everyone. So that's just something I want to add additional as well, because a lot of times what I've
yeah,
seen is that occasionally in our repo we'll get someone report a bug and they might just even just put a title.
Yeah.
nothing else. And so I just have to go back and say, hey, can can you give us more details? Can you tell us what's going on? I'm not sure. I can't really reproduce this. And so if you take the time to create an issue on a bug, just take a little bit more time to add some more information, and then that's much more likely to get worked on.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, the steps to reproduce it are super important. Sometimes it's hard because we will get reports sometimes where folks are just like, this has happened to me a few times, but
Yeah.
I literally don't know how to reproduce it. But it's still good to log that kind of issue, but like kind of
Mm-hmm.
be clear that it seems to be not necessarily random, but you don't know what the steps are, but still say like maybe what you were doing, like like the labels on the page disappeared after I came from this page, any kind of clues basically, because at the end of the day we're all detectives, I guess. So
Yeah.
um I was gonna say too, so
And
Chris, sorry, go ahead, Christina.
nope, go for it.
I was just going to say how Christina was mentioning there's an issue template. The other thing you'll notice, and this is not unique to our repository, others do this as well, but when somebody creates an issue, we will produce an automated message with GitHub Actions. So this is what you see here on the screen right now. So it's
Mm-hmm.
it's it's obviously not personalized. It's a general message, but it's just saying thanks for submitting the issue. We explain that we'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. And like I was mentioning before about the ready for dev label and so on, or issues labeled type bug, it says those are up for grabs. So we explicitly tell it,
Mm-hmm.
mention this in here. And again, like we were saying, to claim an issue to work on, it says please leave a comment. And so pretty much what we've said so far. And the template's great because like we're all humans, we're not robots, so we forget things sometimes. So this
Yeah.
kind of automation is really useful. Um, the other thing is I thought we could maybe just show the templates quickly. Um,
Yep.
so uh, obviously, right now for the bug smash, there's issues up for grabs, but it's very possible that you come across one maybe while you're fixing a bug from bug smash, or you
Yep.
just in general, and you can
That
just
happened
open up the
today.
issue. Okay. Yeah. So if we're on, this is on any repository, but there's a new issue button. So if you click that, we have two templates here. I won't go into the report of security vulnerability, but it's just a different template which will say like, well, I did this and I'm able to, I don't know, do some cross-site scripting on your site or something. So that
Yeah.
you can submit that. But typically you're going to just a bug report. You'll click the get started button and you'll the other thing I'll mention here too is, you know, don't just describe things as best as you can. Don't stress out about like, oh, is the title good enough? Did I give, you know, good enough, details? Do the best you can, and honestly, it's appreciated. Uh, as we were mentioning,
Yeah,
there
and
is this
sometimes
template.
we can go in. Yeah, sometimes we can go in as we like investigate a little bit more with you after you've created an issue and be like, oh, well, maybe this title makes more sense. Or you'll see that throughout our repo sometimes that sometimes those get changed. So I wouldn't worry
Yeah,
too much about that. Like you can do as much as you can, and then we can work with you to make it an even better issue for everyone to work with.
yeah, exactly. And like I know sometimes I'll fix some spelling mistakes in the title, and it's not because I'm being nitpicky.
Yeah.
It's more about like when we're searching for things later. So like if
Mm-hmm.
something's
Yeah.
misspelled, and it doesn't really happen that often, but these are just things that you might see that happen to an issue or a pull request that you create. Sometimes even the pull request will change the title or modify it slightly, um,
Mm-hmm.
just to kind of reflect more of what the work is sometimes. But yeah, so we have this template
Well, I
and
think that's a good point too, though, for anyone who maybe English is like your second language. Like I'm in a country that speaks Spanish. I make mistakes all the time because Spanish is not my first language. And
yeah,
so when you're on and you feel like maybe you can't report something because the language barrier, just know that we will work with you to fix these like issues up so that everyone understands what's going on. Just do the
yeah,
best you can. Like we have that happen sometimes, not a big deal. We're going to work with you to make sure that like everyone can understand what's going on.
yeah, no, exactly. And yeah, so like we were saying, we have a template. If you go to preview, you're gonna see some of the info here. But there's a bunch of stuff in tags like this, these are for folks who aren't aware, these are HTML comment tags. They're like that so it doesn't show up in the actual issue, but
Mhm.
it's got information in there explaining to you what to do and stuff. And I would say in general, or not in general, I would say if a repository has templates, follow the template and fill it out. A lot of uh, I don't think we really do this. We don't automatically close it or stuff. But I know there's other repositories. If you don't fill out the template, uh, you know, they just close the issue because they say like this wasn't there or whatever. And
Yeah.
this is not because they're being terrible people. It gets back to the whole human aspect of open source, which is folks have to triage these issues or go through the pull requests, and so like if there's a lot of stuff missing, it's a big brain drain because they would have to kind of
Yeah.
say like, oh hey, you forgot this, can you please fill that in? And maybe there's a bunch of back and forth, and so it's really about just keeping humans in a good mental state, I think. So if it's there, please fill it out. uh,
Yeah, and we don't automatically close them, but as the
yeah.
open source community manager, if I find issues that don't have like a lot of information and I've reached out to the person and I've asked for more information and they don't give anything and there's nothing we can do, I do close the issues. So that is something to keep in mind. Like
Yeah.
it's not because we're trying to be mean, it's just because there's nothing we can do with it at that point, and so there's no point in having the issue open.
Yeah, exactly. So that's if you need to file an issue. The other thing I'll go through is the pull request template, because once you do have
Hmm.
an issue and you've been working on it, you'll have you'll be working it on your local machine, or maybe you're working in Gitpod, which is another way you can deploy Forum to work on. It's in a I don't know if you can drop that link, Christina, but docs.forum.com there.
Hmm. Yep.
And yeah, so when you have a pull request, if we come here, uh, here, I'll go to one I'm working on. This isn't the template because I won't be able to. This is the template that's been filled out. I can't show you a new one because,
Yeah.
well, I probably could. I just need to create a branch and with nothing in it and then create one. But typically this is the template that you'll see, and it's a little long in some cases, but there's a big chunk of it that's dedicated to just the forum team at the end, so you don't have to worry about that so much.
Yeah.
But typically, when you fill out the template, put in as best descriptions as you can, or as much info as you can about what you fixed. Um, if it was a user interface related issue, it's really appreciated if you could put like a before and after screenshot. If you
Yeah.
there's other services like loom.com if you need to do a screen share or like a small video if you want to. Um, but it's always good to kind of see the before and after, um, because we will review it, and like when because I work on the front end, I will pull the code down. Like typically what I do
Hmm.
is I'll look through the code on GitHub first, just kind of like as a quick scan first. Then I pull it down, then I try running it, and then I see if like things are working as expected. But the screenshots really help from like at least like an initial like, oh, okay, I fixed the text, so now it's bolded when something's selected or something. So it's just kind of nice to
Yeah.
see the side by side. Um,
And selfishly, it helps me a lot because I create our change logs that we put on
oh, okay, okay.
forum.dev, and I like to add the before and after so everyone can see the wonderful work you've done. Like I will drop one today that we had a couple before and after photos from contributors. Thank you to those who contributed. So it's definitely helpful.
Yeah. So I'll go through here. So the first part is like what kind of PR is it? Maybe it's a refactor, feature, or a bug fix, or optimization, or it's just not just it's a documentation update. Uh, what?
Definitely not just. I appreciate
Yeah,
those.
yeah,
Anyone
yeah.
want to contribute to our documentation?
It's
Reach
definitely
out to
not
me.
just. I actually have a post on like every contribution to open source makes sense. Matters. Because if the docs are wrong, then basically things go sideways. Um,
Yeah.
so this is all using Markdown. So if I come into the edit mode, when you select it, you put an X here to show which one you checked off. But if you're in this mode, you can Actually, I have to cancel editing it. Uh, I'll get to my favorite part of the pull request in a sec too. Um, once you've saved it, say you're like, oops, no, it's not a bug fix, it's a refactor. You can actually just click the the check boxes right there, and GitHub knows
Huh.
to update it. Um,
I
so
did not realize that.
uh,
Now I
there's
learned something new.
there's a few nuggets in here. So the description, again, put as best a description as you can. One that's really interesting is, so this is not unique to us, but we just have a section called related tickets and documents. And what you'll do is you'll say like, this is pointing to the bug that gets fixed, for example. So what you'll do is you put the pound sign or the tic-tac-toe, whatever you like to call it, then the issue number. Uh, and then if you click on it, it'll go to that issue. But one thing that's interesting is, say you know your pull request is going to close an issue, you can come here, and I believe it's Rhymes, who's one of my coworkers, who showed me this. So if you come here, if I come to preview, I think I have to update it. Hold on a sec. It only does it once it's updated, I think. Okay, you're gonna see here, it says closes that issue. And all of a sudden, you'll see there's this kind, I can zoom in a bit more. It's got this thin dotted line under it. And this is actually a special thing in a pull request where GitHub will all of a sudden now know to say that once this PR is merged, it's actually gonna automatically close the issue. So if I come to the issue, you're gonna see, does it do it? Yeah. See right up here, all of a sudden it says may be fixed by. And
Yeah.
it's not something you necessarily have to do, because once the pull request is merged, we can go and close it. This is kind of more like one of those
But I love it if you do it as your open source community manager. If you put closes and it closes it automatically, you are now one of my favorite contributors.
Okay, so there you go. So if you want to be one of Christina's favorites, write closes. I'm
Yes.
just gonna update mine. I think mine actually closes that issue, but I have to go over this after.
Yeah.
I'll just go through a few more things. Some of this is I give some QA instructions here.
Hmm.
This issue I was working on, it's kind of detailed, so I put in quite a lot of steps.
Yeah.
Um, because we have a version 1 editor and a version 2 editor. But other notables, and this is related to front end development only, but if there's any UI accessibility concerns, we had the awesome Marcy Sutton work with us last fall, and part of what she did was she wrote a bunch of documentation, which is like really approachable documentation, um, but kind of like a good primer on like stuff to look out for when you're working on some kind of front end issue. And if there's
Yeah.
any UI, if there's any accessibility concerns, you mention it in here, and you can check out the docs here if I like open this. Um, Again, it goes over the basics. There's some advanced things. This is not complete, but this is kind of like a good primer for folks, because some folks aren't as aware of accessibility issues. So this is something to just take note of. Aside from that, um, did you add tests? Typically, we want you to add tests.
Yeah.
It depends on what it is, but I would say normally most pull requests have tests added to them.
If
If
it is
there,
something like documentation, then you probably won't have tests.
yeah,
There's a few cases where you won't, but a lot of times if you don't add tests, you're gonna have someone on the team comment back, "Hey, this looks good. Can you add tests?"
yeah,
Or put
yeah.
it in
Another example of why you might not need to put tests in your pull request is maybe you refactor a piece of code, but the code still, like, the test is like, that's the way this is supposed to work. So it's kind of actually nice if there are tests on something and you do the refactor and the tests are still passing, then it's kind of like a nice confidence booster, that what you did was good. But if there is no test, regardless of what the reason is, you check off no, and then you say why. And then a lot of
Yeah.
times, and I've had coworkers tell me this too, they're like, they get to this part and they're like, I mean, we're pretty good about writing tests, but sometimes it's like, I don't know if this needs tests. And then they get into this section. It's my awesome coworker Vida, he who added this part here to say why. I think it's really good because it gives you pause before you're like, you know, you kind of get a bit of guilt, like, yeah,
I
I
guess I
guess I
should
should write
go do
that.
a test.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
It's our own way of being passive aggressive without being passive aggressive.
yeah,
Just
yeah.
like, are you sure you didn't want to do a test there?
The other one is a nice one. It could be, and it's not just for
Yeah.
external contributors. Sometimes even core team members. They're just like, I'm not really sure how to test this, so they'll just check this off, and then because everything's open source and it's in the open, there'll just be some back and forth about like, okay, well, you can do this, or check out like here's an example from another test. You can probably do something similar to that, for example.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah, especially on our team, sometimes we have people who are more back end that maybe works on front end, and then they don't know how to do like the Cypress test that we have, or vice
yeah,
versa. And so it's really nice to have that and have everyone collaborate that way.
yeah. Uh, this section here is really just for our team, like the core team, and this is more about communicating the changes here if they do need to be communicated. Um, this next part can apply to external contributors too, depending on what you're working on.
Yeah.
Sometimes like something you did will also require some post-deployment tasks. Um, if you're not sure and whoever is reviewing it, they might know. But if you're an external contributor and you're like, once this, I don't know, this database script runs to update something in the back end, we need to do this as well, for example. And it's
Hmm.
just putting steps here or just some comment about what needs to be done. Now, the favorite part of my pull request is adding the option.
My favorite part, seeing everyone's gifts.
Yeah, yeah. So I try to be creative. I mean, I had a lot of fun when it's a couple of years ago we had lint errors on the front end. There was just a lot of them because uh, I had put some stuff in place. This was before I was working there, but it was never like validated before you merge stuff. Since then we've got
Hmm.
like Husky, and I validate on the server now when like it runs the continuous integration. But before that, we just had this lintathon where everybody was just all these PRs to fix all the lint errors in the front end, and I always had fun going to Giphy.com and just finding like laundry lint gifs. So
Yeah.
uh,
I will say, just for anyone who's having like any issues with, maybe we should scroll away from the
yeah, yeah,
thing for a minute.
yeah. Sorry,
If
that's a
you
lot
have
of
any
motion.
vestibular issues, we'll scroll right away from
Yeah,
that. But yeah, I like them too. I actually go into the PRs a lot of time and just look at the so, like
yeah.
they're usually interesting to see what people have picked for them.
Um, I know I'm talking a lot here, Christina, so you can tell me to put a lid on it soon if you want. The other thing I was going to mention is if you are contributing to the Bug Smash, is you will need to get set up. Uh,
Hmm.
there's a few ways you can do this, but your best source of installation documentation is going to where Christina, excuse me, linked before docs.forum.com, and there's instructions on how to get set up for Mac, Windows, Linux. There's Gitpod as well, which is kind of like it's a containerized solution that is accessible from a website. It's like
Hmm.
uh, we don't have it works, but we don't officially support it yet. But there's GitHub code spaces as well. That's kind of what Gitpod is. So it's kind of
We
nice,
have
like,
Docker too, right?
yeah,
I do want to say one thing about both Docker and Gitpod is that a lot of people run into a lot of issues getting those up. If you run into issues getting those up, please feel free to leave a comment and we will try to help as much as we can. Someone just today had a problem with Docker and I had someone on the team helping them because that we do know those are like sore spots as far as getting forum up and something we are actively like working on to make better.
yeah. So I'm just dragging the web captioning off of my screen share. Um, yeah. And also that's just a reminder that we do have web captioning. It's not live captioning from a person. It's using webcaptioner.com, but baby steps. What was I gonna say about? No, I don't think I
You were
had
talking
anything to
about
say.
Gitpod before I
Oh
interrupted
yeah,
you.
yeah. So like I was saying, yeah, just the docs. It's a great spot. I do know this is a known issue. I'm not sure if it's just on Mac, but the Docker installation just takes a really long time. I don't know the technical reasons why. I think it might be related to file IO stuff, but I'm not positive. Um, I typically work from a local install. It's just easier for me, and but not everybody's machine might be, some people don't like doing that. Some people do.
Hmm.
If you are on Windows, and it mentions this in the documentation, but the backend is a Rails application, so you absolutely need a Linux environment to run Ruby. So you have to install WSL2. It's mentioned in the Windows documentation somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah, right here.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's the one thing extra that you would have to do on Windows, but if you're doing web development, you might already have this enabled on your Windows machine. But if not, this is the official Microsoft Docs to show you how to do that. Um,
Yeah, and if you have any problems at all setting it up initially, I think for a lot of people coming in, especially anyone who doesn't necessarily work like with backend or Ruby, that it can be intimidating getting Forum up the first time. So if you have any problems at all when you're, and a lot of, and I'm not just going to say this is just Forum, a lot of open source projects are like this. If you have a problem installing whatever it is you would like to contribute to, that's a great time to comment on whatever issue you're working on and just ask for help. That's the time when you want to ask for help. And generally, someone's going to try to help you get that up because we want people to contribute. If someone has something open source and their project, you see that a lot of people have been contributing, then they probably want that. And so they're going to help you. And definitely at Forum, we will help you
yeah,
try to get up your environment.
yeah, and this is advice not just for working in open source, but if ever when you start a new job, like you're onboarding, it's the first time
Yeah.
you're seeing this code or installing something, it's the best time to update documentation. So like,
Yep.
if you start the install and like you hit a snag or like you get some error installing something, just take note of it. You know, you can create an issue and then from there, um, you know, it's really appreciated because other folks will not run into that issue next time, or if they do, they'll see, okay, I got this error, okay, this is what I need to do to fix it. And I remember myself prior to working at Forum, because I'd been contributing to it quite a while, there was something that changed. I think there was like a Ruby upgrade, and I went to go get latest of the project, and then I ran it, and then I was just getting weird errors and stuff trying to update something, and then so I got the error, I added it to the docs, and then I wrote the solution I had found or whatever. It's just super helpful. Um, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I think most people on our team have done as they've gone through and like set up. That's one of the things that's kind of in our onboarding is just to mention like, hey, if you run into any errors or something, please update the docs. I updated the docs when I was going through because I couldn't get it up. There's like mistakes. So I think it's an important thing to remember that if and this is like anything when you're learning stuff and it's one of the reasons I encourage people to blog is like if you learn something someone else is probably going to go through that same
yeah,
pain point and you can help someone out. You can help yourself out if you get to go back and look at those things later on because you're like, oh yes, I've done this before. So it's just a great reminder to write that out. Take the time, take a minute to just write it out, whatever error or problem you've interacted with, and help someone and help yourself later on as well.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, and Star, who's in the chat, I was pairing with her the other day. She's set up on Gitpod, and like she mentioned in the chat, she'll probably put up a PR to update some of the docs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a configuration change you need to do for like the host name because normally when we're running the project locally, it's localhost port
Mm-hmm.
3000. But when you're on Gitpod, it generates its own address, and you need to use
Okay.
that address. So she'll probably have a pull request up for that. And I know she's also working on a bug for Bug Smash, which definitely not pressuring her, but I pretty sure when I was chatting to her before, I think she said she has it pretty much solved, maybe. But anyways, so
And if you don't and you need help, please
yeah,
comment. We will help you.
yeah. Cool.
And thank you.
Um,
I do want to touch real quick that in our repo, so I want to, if you go back to our repository, this is something I want to mention for like open source projects. When we showed like the templates, a lot of times in open source projects, you'll see a feature request one too. We used
yeah,
to have that. We don't anymore. There's a reason why, and we'll kind of talk about that in just a second, but not, that's something you want to look at on any project you go in. So most projects within their own repo, they're probably going to have you report bugs there, but not everyone wants a bunch of feature requests in their repository. That was one of the things that I actually kind of changed for the team when I came in, and it was because we had like 800 over 800 issues, and it was just too much for anyone to just kind of grasp at any point of like there's just too much information here, and so we have decided as a team to use for what's called forum.dev. It's an instance of forum, and that's where we have people take feature requests now. Other teams might use something like GitHub discussions. I know where was that one that
yeah,
I
we
think
we don't.
Tailwind does. There's a couple big projects that use GitHub discussions, and
Yeah,
it's a wonderful thing too. Like you can just go and stay in the repository, but they don't want the feature requests in their issues, like clogging up their issues, because they want to keep an eye on bugs. And so you can go to their discussions instead, and it's like a little mini community within whatever that open source project is, and that's typically where they ask you to have like feature requests. Us, we do it on forum.dev. And once he goes in here for a second, you can see some examples. Like if you go down, there's like, adding certain tags. So adding certain tags or channels, there's a bunch of different feature requests in here, and then we
yeah,
can talk about them in there. And then I get to take these directly to product as well. So once our product team doesn't have to worry about going into GitHub and trying to
yeah.
figure out where the feature requests are. They're in here. We can communicate all together. This is now our little community around the repo and where we can chat about feature requests. So that's why we have it in there. Other people want you to go into a Discord or other kinds of forums. I think GitHub discussions is becoming more popular now that it's out of beta for a lot of bigger projects. So
Yeah.
that's one where you'll see. So if you ever see a little tab that says discussions when you go into a open source project, that's probably where they want you to have like conversations, general conversations, instead of
Yeah.
clogging up their issues.
Yeah, because the issue, the other thing that folks might not realize is as soon as somebody comments on an issue, it's like I have GitHub notifications disabled in my
Yeah,
email. I just because when I was on other projects that weren't as big as Forum, it wasn't that big a deal, and it was like a
yeah.
kind of a friendly reminder that way. But now I live in like I just go to uh, GitHub and there's this no I mean if you've used GitHub at all, there's notifications, and for example you'll see like okay, this is another project I work on, but like forum here, like you can see like there's 992 things going on in here. So like I
Hmm.
have my own filters and stuff because it can get overwhelming is what I'm getting at basically. So yeah, so that's why like something like the discussions or like forum dev, which is what we use, you still have those good conversations, but like maintainers aren't being bombarded with like the issues updated. Somebody,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it can become overwhelming. Uh,
Yeah, and before when we had like project, we had stuff that was open like from like 2018 and just kind of buried because no one could navigate that many issues. It was just too much. And now we have a better eye on things. And
yeah,
we also keep our change log here. So you'll see like the connection between like, here's some feature requests. Oh, here's the change log of stuff we've actually added. And you can see the direction like our project's going. And a lot of people, other open source projects will do that within their like GitHub discussions or wherever they've decided their community is going to be to ask these things. It just kind of keeps everything together in a much more maintainable way for those working on the project and those wanting to contribute. Because imagine you as a contributor going into a project and seeing 800 open issues, you might get a little overwhelmed and be like, I don't really want to contribute to this project.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it just helps everyone out.
I, I just realized I wasn't following our team on forum dev. I was like, that's probably why I'm not getting notifications about things. Yeah, okay, cool, cool. So, all right, so we've talked a bit about the bug smash, like how things are working in GitHub. Um, there's other tools that are available to you. This is, again, not forum specific, but um, you don't have to use these things. I find it super helpful though. There's the GitHub CLI. So
Mhm.
I think
I can
Christina
get
has a
that.
link to that. She'll drop that.
Yep.
I'm gonna go to my VS Code for a second here, and let me just clean things up here. So just make this a little bigger.
Vercel Next.js, they have GitHub discussions. That's the one I was thinking of.
Okay, okay.
Yeah,
All right, I'm just gonna stop my web server here.
yeah.
Um, so you can see here, I'm on a branch right now that was somebody's PR previously. Shout out to Andrew Bone, who is linked to 20 on Twitter and GitHub. He's one of our more frequent contributors. Um, so I have some Git
I just want to
aliases.
interject 1 second and just
Yeah, yeah.
say, Andrew, I have a better idea of like how many people are contributing because I've been using a thing called orbit.love, and Andrew has like over 500 things he's done in our repository. It's not all like contributions as far as PRs, but like commenting, helping people. And so, Andrew, if you're in here, thank you. You have been a wonderful contributor. I see you, and it's wonderful. Thank you.
Awesome. Cool, cool. Yeah, so I'm just gonna do. I have some aliases here. I'm really lazy, so I have an alias for Git. It's literally just the letter G, and then I have an alias for branch, which is just B. So this is just showing my branches here. These are all the branches I have on my local machine. But what I want to show you is, let's come here. There's different ways to install a GitHub CLI depending on whether you're on Mac or Windows or Linux. But what Christina dropped there, they have the installation instructions there. So let me just close this here. I'll zoom this in one more. Okay, so I'm gonna switch to our main branch. These are not traditional GitHub commands. These are aliases I have. So that's just saying check out the main branch. Shout out to Josh Pitts on our team and a couple others that helped switch us from master to main as well. So I'm just gonna say, I want to create a new branch. So I'm gonna say, these aren't the commands. I should have prepped this more. These are all my aliases, but I'm gonna say new branch, and I'll just say test for stream. Oh, whoops. It's not a Git alias. It's a shell alias. I have it. It's a shell. I have a special alias because the way we work in our team is we prefix all our PRs with our
Mm.
username. But that's not what I want to do. So let's do. Let me open up a file. Sure, tabs.jsx. And I'll just say awesome comment, which does absolutely nothing. And I'm going to add this. That's just git add. That's the same as doing like this. Um, and
I'm gonna link to an article of like one of our most popular articles on Dev about like commands so that you also can see some commands
cool,
in
cool.
here.
Awesome. Yeah, so basically what I'm going to do here is, oh, I didn't realize Andrew's in the chat. Hey, Andrew. Um, I'll do it. Yeah, so you can see here I have this one change with that comment, which does absolutely nothing. Uh, Oops. Get back in my terminal. So I'm gonna do git add, which I already did. Okay. Git CI is the same as doing git commit dash M for message, and I'll say this is a junk commit. Don't write that in your own commits. This is just for testing purposes. One thing you're going to see that's happening right now is all these things are running. This is a pre-commit hook that we have set up in the project. You don't need to do anything. It's just whenever you commit a file. So say I commit a JavaScript file. If there's tests related to it, the tests for that are related to that project will run. And if they fail, you won't be able to commit the code. And there
Okay.
are ways to get around this. You can do like a dash dash node dash verify to skip it, but it doesn't really help you because once you create your pull request, if your test is
Mm-hmm.
failing locally, it's going to fail in your pull request and you won't be able to merge
Yeah.
it anyways. So this is just kind of a way to let anybody who's contributing to the project, just say like, oh, hey, by the way, this test fails. Other things it does is it'll run prettier, ESLint, all these checks. It's all automated stuff. So because getting back to what I was saying before about we're humans and we forget stuff. So this is a great opportunity for the robots to be our overlords. Um, okay, so this passed all the checks here. So it's in a good state. So if we want to use the GitHub CLI, once it's installed, use GH. That's how you use it. Now, if I just type GH, I'll make this bigger here. It's going to just show you the help on what you need to do. Typically,
Okay.
what you would do as an external contributor is you're going to say git GH, so for GitHub, PR for pull request, and then create. And
Nice.
what this does is it's gonna do all the like pushing it to GitHub for you, everything. I mean, you can do this with the command line outside of this, but it's just handy, and I use this all the time now.
Mm-hmm.
So in my case, I'm working out of the forum repository. I probably should have been a little more prepped and forked the repository to show the different view, but you'll be given the option to create a PR, and you're going to say where do I want to do it from. You'll be working out of
Yeah.
a fork, but so I'm going to just choose here, and then it's going to give a title. By default, it's the last commit you did. You
Mm-hmm.
just press enter and you can continue. At this point, you can press the letter E there, and it'll launch like Vim or whatever text editor runs.
And then you'll never get out again.
There we go. We've been waiting to say that joke on the stream, and it's finally happened. Um, I usually skip this, and the only reason is because I like to fill out the template on the web page in GitHub.
Yeah.
But if you actually do it this way, it will load our template, and you can still fill it out. This is just my preference, but do what works best for you. And then at this point, you can submit the PR right away, or you can do continue in browser. Add metadata. I'm honestly not sure what other stuff that does. I've never used it. I always go to continue in browser, so you can use the arrow keys to select it. And if I press this, it's going to launch GitHub in a web browser, except what happened. Oh, there we go.
Woo.
Okay. So the nice thing about this, oh, I know what happened. It opened my default. It's because I'm running Chrome right now because of the stream.
Oh, right, right.
Okay, and now I don't know what happened to it. Hold on a sec. Is it here? Let me try it again. Uh, okay, let's continue in browser. Okay, there we go. Okay, so
Yay.
let me zoom this in. And then at this point, you're about to create a pull request. You can see up top here,
Mm-hmm.
I'm working in the repository, so it's a little different, but normally it'll show your fork over here and the branch you're working on, and then it'll
Yeah.
say like, what do you want to compare it to? And then here's the title, like I put in at the start there at the command line. And then at this point, we're back in the pull request template like we went through before. You can
Yeah.
do whatever you want here, fill out what makes sense. Um, I will create this PR just to show you something though. There's something down here, like in the past, a lot of folks would write like, okay, I'm working on this pull request. It's not ready yet, so I'm gonna say something like
Work
WI
in progress.
yeah,
Yeah.
WIP or write work in progress. You don't need to do
Mm.
that anymore. You can come down here and you're saying like, okay, I have a pull request. It's not ready to be merged, but maybe I want folks to get eyes on it for whatever reason. Like, hey, I'm thinking of this approach here, because you can
Mm-hmm.
always have comments in here. So I'm going to say, I'm just going to create a draft PR.
Yeah.
Now, what a draft PR does is it's what it it's what it says it is. It's a draft PR. You can't merge a draft PR. So even me as a core contributor on the team, I'll never be
Mm-hmm.
able to merge this until it actually gets converted to an open pull request. So as I mentioned, you do this maybe because you just want to get some eyes on it, have some discussion still because of an approach perhaps, just all
Mm-hmm.
hypothetical. And then you're there like, okay, you know what? Okay, I had my conversations. I think it's in a good state now. I'm gonna put it to ready for review.
Okay.
And then from here, you're gonna see up top now. I didn't show it before, but it said draft here before. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Now it says it's open, and now this is in a state where, assuming everything passes in terms of continuous integration, like the tests and all that, and people have signed off on it, then it can be merged. Um, I'm gonna close this because it's not gonna get
You don't
merged
want
unless,
people to get reviewed.
well, unless folks want to approve my really nice comment that I added there. So I'm just gonna close that. And I'll also mention something else because just because it just popped in my head when I close this is sometimes we will close pull requests. Now, this happens typically if maybe there was some conversation like well, usually you don't end up in this situation because we have conversations in the issue and like as I was mentioning before about asking to be assigned to an issue, you won't usually end up with like competing pull requests, but maybe sometimes for whatever reason we're just like, oh, you know what, this other thing actually happened to fix it, so we're actually going to close this, like like maybe it was a side effect of some other pull request, or there could be other reasons, but this doesn't happen too often, but it could happen. uh,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
one one potential reason they could get closed sometimes is, say you contributed to the project and you have a pull request open, it's been sitting in the repository for like 5 months. We'll come check,
Yeah.
we don't close these things automatically. We'll say like, oh, hey, so and so, just wondering if you needed some assistance on this, or are you still working on this? And then usually we'll make a judgment call at some point to say like, well, this is clearly inactive from our point of view, so we're going to close it. And that can happen. But
Yeah.
say you as the contributor, you're like, oh, sorry, like life happened, so I got busy. um, you can always come back to your pull request and you can reopen it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And assuming you still have your branch, you can continue with the same PR. You don't need to create another pull request. And this is something I've seen folks do a lot. They'll say stuff like, oh, I messed up this pull request, or I did something wrong, so I'm going to close it. I'm going to create another one. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't, there is some maintenance burden to that. I don't think it's that high, but it's just more to let you know that you can always fix your pull request, and it can
Yeah.
be reopened if it makes sense. So that's all.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of times, if we close it, just like Nick said, we will even say, and when before we close it, if you find time that you still want to work on this, let us know. Either you can reopen it or we'll reopen it, and you can keep going on from there.
Yeah. Um, the other thing I was going to mention just about our processes in general, I can't speak for other projects, but on Forum, we require two core contributors to approve a pull request before we can merge it. And this is just really to make sure that like whatever's getting put in, it's like at least two sets of eyeballs have been on it. Sometimes there'll be more people that approve it, depending on what the pull request is, because it could span front end, back end, and so we might want
Mm-hmm.
folks, with a bunch more sets of eyes on it. Uh,
Yep.
yeah, so I think that's kind of it about there. In terms of like getting set up with the project, like I was mentioning before, there's the docs.forum.com. I
Mm-hmm.
believe they specify in the I think it's mentioned in our documentation on how to create a fork. Um,
Yep.
but yeah, I'm pretty sure that's in there. The the other thing is you may want to update your branch at some point. So maybe You know what?
There's two other things with PRs though, like before you put them in. One, if you are going to contribute, make sure you read our contributing guide, which we have. Just make sure
Oh
you
yeah.
understand everything that we kind of expect. And then if you're a first time contributor, we do ask you to sign, what is it called? The CL
The
agreement.
CLA, the contributor license agreement, and
Yeah,
I don't know all the lawyers speak in it. It's nothing like,
yeah.
it's nothing evil about it. I think it's just to agree that because it's an open source project that we work on, there's some uh, I think I don't know all the
It's
legal
it's
stuff.
supposed to be that we're okay, that you're okay with us using your code that you are contributing, that you give us, the okay to use your code in this open source project.
Yeah, exactly.
Basically, there is a pull request somewhere that has a lot more conversation on it because someone did ask us before, like a lot more questions on it, which was a good conversation. I can't remember exactly where it's at, but yeah, if you ever have questions about it, you can feel free to ask, and we will answer those questions as well. If you're like, oh, what am I signing? You can ask questions. So.
Um, I'm not sure how long this will take because it will download the code, but I'm gonna show you what you can do to, like, if you're a contributor, you need to fork the project.
Mm-hmm,
So I'll just zoom in here a bit. So if you come to github.com/forum/forum, uh,
mm-hmm.
at the top of the
And this is going to be with most projects. If you
yeah,
go to an open source project, they're going to want you to fork it.
yeah, exactly. Um, if you click the button here, fork, it's gonna show up, and I'm part of a few organizations, so it's just asking me where I want to do it. Okay, it already says I've created a fork, but maybe I can delete it. Hold on a sec. Or you know what? Let's assume that you click the button to say create fork, so I have my fork now.
Mm-hmm,
I'm gonna come here now, and I'm gonna copy the link here, and I'm gonna come to my editor, and I'm just gonna go to my dev folder. This is where I keep all my projects, super secret stuff. And I'm gonna say git clone, and then I'm gonna paste the link. Whoops, and I pasted it twice. Uh,
mm-hmm.
I'm gonna do one other thing here, which is I'm gonna specify the folder name, and the only reason why I'm doing that is because I already have a folder called forum because I'm already working out of it. So
Ah,
I'm just
yeah,
gonna call it forum too. But if you're doing a git clone, you don't need to do this unless for some reason you want to name the repository something other than the repository name.
yeah,
So uh, I won't lie, we our project is a big project. So
yeah. It takes a while.
yeah,
If it's taking you a while, it's okay.
yeah. I,
It just takes a
I
while.
have a pretty fast internet connection, so this went pretty quickly. But um, so what I wanted to show here is I'm going to open it and just give me a sec here. Because what I'd like to show you is how you go about updating your fork. Because
Mm-hmm.
our project is very active. We're deploying multiple times during a day. Easily, I would say at least 5 times a day. The code is updated
Yeah.
really frequently. So it's just kind of good to be up to date with stuff. Forum.
By the way, if you all are hearing snoring at all, my giant mastiff is on the bed back here. So
Oh, okay. That's APA.
Appa, yeah.
Where is Forum 2? Did I not call it that? Oh, wait a minute. I think I created. Did I not create it in the right place? Hold on a sec. Dev forum. Oh, I I created it in the forum code base, I think. Yeah, whoops. Okay. Sorry, just one sec here. I cloned my fork into my actual forum repo.
Showing my dog back there. There we go.
Let's try this again. Okay, now cd forum. Okay, cool. There we go. All right, let me open up the project. Ooh, no. got fat fingers today. Apologies. Bum, bum. So basically what I want to do here is we've already cloned the repository, the fork. I'm
Hmm.
opening up the project, which is the forked forum. And let's close that. Let's open up here. And what I want to show you is you can do something called git remote dash v. I forget what the dash
Hmm.
v stands for. But what you're gonna see, okay, I already have it set up, I guess. Or maybe Git does it automatically now. I'm not sure. So
I
what
think it does it automatically because I did this just the other day on like a new project. So I
okay,
think
I think it's
I think it.
recent because I used to always have to
Yeah.
create it, but they probably figured so many people had pain points with this. Okay, so remotes are, if you look here, it's saying github.com and it's nikkitonline/forum.git. The
Hmm.
origin here represents my forked repository of the forum code base. The
Yeah.
upstream remote here is the actual forum code base. So,
Yeah.
so let me do, this is just a built-in command with ZSH here, but okay, so it's saying everything's even, like I have the latest, but the thing is, it's the latest of my forked repository. So what
Hmm.
I want to do is if you do git fetch, this is going to grab the latest of your repository.
Of your repository. Yeah.
It doesn't pull in the code, but it'll be like if there's new branches and so on, that information will get pulled down. But in our case, and it defaults to the origin remote up top there. But in our case, we really want to get the latest of upstream, which is the forum repository. So you're going to see all this information coming down. It'll probably be a lot because I think the last time I used the fork was a year and a half ago. But
Mm-hmm.
okay, so you can see here there's some new branches that got pulled in. It knows that the code is at a certain version now.
Hmm.
I'm I'm on the master branch on my repository because it was old. This was before we converted it, but I'm just gonna say create a new branch, nick test. This is a branch in my forked repository now. And I'm like, okay, say hypothetically, I've made a bunch of changes. I'm ready to create my pull request, but I'm like, oh man, I've been working on this for like a week and a half. I don't have the latest of stuff. So what you want to do is you want to do the fetch upstream, which I already did, and then you want to do a git merge, and then you want to say upstream.
Mm.
And in our case, we want to say, so what this is saying is merge all the latest code from the actual forum code base's main branch. So if I run this, there might be conflicts because like the code I have is really old. This is something typical
Hmm.
that will happen to you. Do not be intimidated by it. So you can see on the right here, it says I have 2000 git changes. That this is also because like I have a really old repository in the fork of mine. But there's all these files, all the staged files here. These are the ones that don't have
Hmm.
conflicts. But it's telling me like these two, there's some conflicts. So let me close my terminal here for a sec. Whoops, gotta shrink that. I'm using VS Code, but you can, whatever editor you're using, there'll be some kind of diffing tool, or if you're a
Hmm.
Vim power user, I just assume you know how to do git merges, and probably this information I'm showing you is not relevant to you. But um, so in Visual Studio Code, at least, it'll tell you like what's current and what's incoming. Incoming is usually from the changes that are coming in, I believe. I always mix up these two because I find the naming really weird. In the context of VS Code, though, you can say, like, I want to accept the current changes, which are my own changes, or I can say, like, I want to accept the incoming ones, which are coming from the actual repository. But in some cases, maybe you're like, I need to manually change some things. This is like where I can't really give like a kind of like a one-stop shop.
Definitive. Yeah.
Sometimes you just have to figure out what's going on, and definitely always ask us if you're really stuck. But I'm
Hmm.
gonna go the easy route just to kind of convey how this works. So I'm going to say accept incoming changes, and then everything looks okay there. Um, and I can add that file to the staged files. It might take a sec because there's 2,000 of them. And then I come to this other one. Again, I need to fix the conflict, so I'm going to scroll down and I'll just say accept incoming changes. It might be wrong what I just did, but it's not the point of what I'm showing. Uh, and then at that point, okay, I'll say that one's good. And from there, I can just say git commit dash m and then like merge latest from forum main or something. Usually there's a automated message that gets generated here.
Mhm.
I'm just not running it through VS Code. I'm just gonna run it through the command line. But you do that, and then it's gonna run tests at this point. Okay, no, maybe I don't. My branch must be really, really old. Um, anyways, at that point, I'm up to date now, and I'm in a good state to say like, okay, you know what? I've got my bug fix. There was some conflict changes. I fixed those. The code is up to date as of like literally right now. I'm gonna create my pull request. Um, and then
And this is Nick, this is important for like also like we were discussing before, like say we closed out a pull request and you want to work on it again, just making sure
yeah,
everything's up to date before you start like working on it again so you can avoid a lot of the issues when you create the PR, right?
yeah, exactly. Because there's nothing stopping you from putting the pull request up without having the latest changes.
Yeah.
Uh, the thing is, it's in general, and this is not even open source specific. This is just like even in your regular workflow at your job, I would
Yeah.
suggest. I typically get the latest of the code base a couple times a day because ours changes quite frequently. But when I wasn't working in open source, I made it a point to typically once a day, usually when I would start my day, or if somebody communicated like, hey, we just merged this huge feature or something. So like it's probably in my best interest to get it more frequently. Because the last thing you want to do is you've got your bug fix and then all of a sudden it's like the day you're ready to do it and you have all these conflicts. So you know
Yeah.
the other thing I'd say about conflicts though is if you're not working on code that other folks are, if you're working on code that nobody else is working on, I would say it's pretty rare you're going to end up with conflicts because you're literally the only person working on that piece
Yeah.
of code. But again, these things do happen. Oh, hey, Chili Fett. Um, yeah, I just kind of wanted to go through that because this is something that it's one of the things I've been asked the most. Like, I did a bug fix. What do I do now? Like, I need to get the latest of the code.
Yeah.
And I can understand it being intimidating. I remember when I started using Git, I used to work in .NET, so it was always Microsoft source control, which is not like Git at all. Um,
Mhm.
so when I started using Git, there's just a lot of stuff I would get nervous about, like, oh, I did a rebase or something, and I would honestly never know what I was doing, and then after a while, 1 week I just said, you know what, I'm biting the bullet and I'm just gonna try and learn some of the concepts. And there's
Yeah.
still stuff I don't really know. Like I still Google certain things because I don't do them often. But just to say, like, don't get intimidated by Git. Um, and also, I know I'm kind of rambling on here, but don't be ashamed if you're using a GUI to use Git as well. There's
Mhm.
100% nothing wrong with it. I always tell people do what works best for you to make you productive. If you're more productive
Yeah.
using a GUI to do your Git stuff, go ahead. I I kind of myself, I purposely wanted to learn the command line with Git, so I just stopped using a GUI for like a week. And
Mhm.
for my workflow in general, I find using the command line, and especially now that the GitHub CLI is there, I find that workflow just really good for myself. But again, it's not a one size fits all. So all those thought leaders that tell you that you shouldn't be using GUIs or your mouse or whatever, just whatever. That's all I have to say to you people. You know?
Yeah, when I worked on a team where we worked mainly in Bitbucket, for some reason I always just like used the GUI for that. It was just easier for me. Now that I work in GitHub more, I tend to use the command line, but it just always depended for me. And again, like just like you said, whatever makes you the most productive, whatever, you're the one working on your stuff. No one else is working on your stuff. So use whatever works best for you and accept what other people do for themselves. I tell this a lot, and I think I've said this on the stream before, but like when I used to teach, a lot of times I purposely used my mouse for things to kind of highlight and show people stuff. And occasionally I'd get students being like, why are you using your mouse? Use the keyboard shortcuts and all these kinds of things. You know what? There's reasons why people do stuff, and it doesn't matter. If they're using their things and they're getting it done, then do what works for you. And for me, it was so that I could purposely like show students certain things, highlight stuff. It just made more sense to do it that way. But people always have an opinion on stuff. So do what works for you.
For sure. I will say though, because I'm working in the front end and we've been doing a lot of accessibility work. My coworker Suzanne
Mm,
Aitchison
mhm.
is pretty top notch when it comes to accessibility work. Um, it- a lot of the site I'm using with the keyboard a lot just
Yeah.
to test things, so I've been using that
Yeah.
a lot more. But I do find it's a nice change sometimes from the mouse. Well, I use a trackpad,
Hmm.
but yeah. So, uh, I guess yeah, let's kind of I don't know if there's other stuff you want to touch on, Christina, or if not, we can kind of recap kind of what we've gone through. Um,
Yeah, I think we should recap. I think we're about at the point where we've covered a lot of stuff. I'm gonna
yeah,
copy another link just to a good article that was recently put out on just contributing to open source. It's really helpful.
yeah.
Check that one out as well.
Is
But yeah, let's go ahead and recap.
that the one from Ciora?
Uh-huh. Ford.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, 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 it's really good. Uh, yeah, so just to recap, we kind of went over the bug smashes.
Your thing says blame rhymes. That's what at the bottom. We do blame rhymes. No, we don't blame rhymes.
I
Rhymes
don't.
rhymes is
Rhymes is
a
awesome.
good person.
Uh,
Get blame is like the worst like command. It's just so harsh.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if they wanted to make it any worse, they could maybe call it git shame, but even, like
Yeah.
it's like I don't know. It could easily just be said called like git last person who touched that line of code or something. You don't have to be so like. Anyways, um, yeah. Anyways, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen here.
No more blaming rhymes.
Yeah, exactly. All right, cool. Let's go back to the Zoom chat. Okay. Yeah, so we went over the bug smash that's going on this month. I don't know if you want to drop that link
Mhm.
again there, Christina, because it's way up in
Yep.
the chat. We went over how things work in our repository. So if you're working on the bug smash, look for the bug smash label on issues.
Mhm.
We talked about our issue templates and the pull request templates. Other things to remember, and this isn't just for our project, any open source project or there's always humans behind these things. So like, sometimes folks don't get back to you right away, and it's not because they're ignoring you. There could be a million things going on, 'cause life. Apparently, there's a pandemic going on still too. Um, so just be mindful of that. Other things, when you're opening up issues or if you're commenting on an issue like that you might take for the bug smash, just put as much information in your question or any kind of feedback because the more that's
Mhm.
there, it's the more help you'll be able to get. Uh,
Yeah.
the same,
Yeah, people have to go through a back and forth just to
yeah,
get you to ask whatever it is you're asking, then you're not gonna get help as this isn't anything that you do, just knowing how to ask questions well. Like
yeah,
if
yeah,
you put
exactly.
as much detail and make it easy for someone to answer your question, you're probably gonna get help a lot quicker. And you'll get help from outside people too, not just like the link to 20s in here. He helps
Yeah.
all the time in our repository, and so do others like Rafi and people like that that help a lot in our repository. The more information you give, the more everyone can help you.
Yeah, exactly. Same goes for the pull request. So, as we mentioned, the pull request also has a template. Please fill it out when you do submit a pull request. If you're working on something related to the user interface, it's really nice if you can provide a before and after screenshot. It just helps folks to grok like kind of high level what was changed. Um,
Yep.
Sometimes it makes sense to put a short screen share or small video. You can use loom.com or whatever tools you use. I use the Giphy tool as well. Um, and
I
again,
think Loom might be integrated now in our GitHub, isn't it? Like,
oh
can't you?
yeah,
Isn't there
I
like a
think there's a
button?
button
Yeah,
or maybe it's a
yeah.
browser extension. I'm not sure. But yeah, any kind of visual stuff, it's good to have images to represent the before and after. In terms of QA, quality assurance, try and provide as detailed the steps as you can for testing out something. It's not because we're trying to make you work super hard. It's just what'll
Hmm.
happen is if, for example, I take a pull request and there's no steps to explain how to test it, I'm probably going to spend a lot of time and then might end up back in the scenario of back and forth, like Christina was mentioning in the issues. So it's just helpful for everybody in general, including the person creating the pull request. Um, if there are accessibility concerns, if it's related to the UI, there's a section in there. Marcy Sutton, as I
Hmm.
mentioned, who did some contract work with us late last fall, she has a great primer doc that's linked in the pull request template. Check that out. Um, Other thing is typically you'll be adding tests to your pull request. There are cases where you might not. Documentation, as Christina mentioned. Sometimes
Hmm.
you're doing refactoring, so the test doesn't need to be changed. It's just, but it's
Yeah.
kind of nice to see the test still pass after your refactor. If you don't include tests, though, in the test section, there's a checkbox to say no, and just give a short answer as to why you're not adding tests. You don't need to write the great novel or anything. And the other point I'd mention about the test is sometimes external or internal contributor, they might just be like, I honestly have no idea how to test this. So there's an option in there to check off to say, I need help. And then
Yeah.
some dialogue will happen in the pull request like, oh, check out this previous PR that does something similar to test this or so on.
Hmm.
We'll help you get sorted there. And the most important part of the pull request template is adding an optional animated GIF. For me, it's never
Yep.
optional. I always add it, and it's just I don't know. I just find it a lot of fun to pick one. So that's just a little fun thing there. Um, we also touched on just how to fork things, how to keep your fork up to date. We talked briefly about the GitHub CLI. We didn't go into it too much. We just went through how to
Hmm.
create a PR with it. But definitely, if you could drop that link again, Christina, check out the GitHub CLI.
Yep.
I find it super helpful. Again, though, just want to reiterate whatever works best for you in terms of workflow, go with what works for you. And I think that's pretty much it. Oh yeah, and then Christina's dog Appa was snoring very loudly, and I think that's where we are.
Yeah, the only other thing I want to say, just for people looking to get into open source one, I just dropped a talk by Nick about open source. So definitely check that out if you have some time and you want to learn even more. But also, when you go into projects, there are lots of projects that are open source, and you might see that maybe they don't really take people's, pull requests. I just encourage you, when you go to a project, look for a contributing guide. Make sure it's something that someone wants you to take the time to contribute to. We
Yeah,
definitely do at Forum, but not every project does, because again, sometimes these are projects where just one person is trying to manage everything, and the more that they get in, the less that they can manage what they're trying to do and add features. So just keep that
yeah,
in mind. Sometimes things, even if they are in the open, they are open source. They might not want you putting in a bunch of PRs. Maybe they're just looking for people to let them know when there's a bug or something like that. Look for where they have their community. For us, it's at forum.dev if you want to have feature requests or just talk about things in general. Other places, it's GitHub discussions, or they might have a Discord. Just keep those things in mind when you go into a project. The more that you can help maintainers, the more that they can help you. So just keep all those things in mind as you go in and start contributing.
yeah. I'm just dropping a link to perform.dev, and also just to I dropped Christina dropped this before, but I'm just gonna drop the documentation website docs.forum.com.
Mhm.
Check that out too. And I think we'll call it a day there.
Sounds good.
Cool, cool. Well, thanks everybody for popping by. Uh, I don't know what you say. Is it Happy Bug Smash, Merry Bug Smash?
Ooh, smash those bugs.
Yeah,
Smash,
but
smash.
Smash
Hulk smash.
in an ethical way. I don't know. I don't know. They're virtual. They're not real
Leave the
bugs.
real bugs alone,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
get all the bugs in the repo. And thank you for everyone who's contributed so far. We've had a great turnout so far, so thank you.
Cool. Awesome. Take care, everybody.